Well, hello there. I'm Callum Johnson, and welcome to the Expanded Universe Holocron, where we're going to be talking about, to start with, Star Wars comics and seeing how it goes, basically, because it's the first one that's going to happen. And we have with us a Gungan fighter. Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, yeah, all the good stuff. Well, first off, because I was on stream and have not mentioned this before, I did purchase last haul sort of thing, so I don't get new Star Wars stuff a lot because of my budget at the moment. So I actually got the Ewok movies and the Droids and Ewoks DVDs that are out, even though they're not the full series. So that's pretty cool. And I thought to start with, we would, since there's not as many people here as I initially thought, talk about something that came up today that I woke up to as well, which will be good to have your perspective on it a little bit too. Which is that we have reprints of some Expanded Universe novels, and Shatterpoint is going to get an unabridged audio edition for the first time. So I'm just going to share the tweet where I saw that. And it'll be good. Hello, Small Time. Welcome. Oh, yes, I like that droid stuff now. I forgot you had that. Hello, Pell. Yeah, I thought we'd talk about this first, just because it gives time for people to join too. So here we've got Lucasfilm celebrates its 50th anniversary, curating a collection of essential Star Wars novels to trade paperback in trade paperback with new covers, which is interesting. So they're actually doing a fair bit with reprinting the novels, at least.
Yeah, I did say that. I think it's interesting how they put those ones out, and I don't know how many there are going to be. I just hope they do like of the the tie-ins, the novelizations, everything. I just hope they really reprint everything.
Yeah, so at the moment it seems like they will be reprinting specific ones, especially with the Essential Legends collection, as they're calling it, which would mean that they're at least reprinting with new art and in a different size a lot of the main story of the EU in the novels.
Yeah,
which is good.
I've got to say that Heir to the Empire one looks pretty neat. The cover, it's actually very similar to the original, but it's it's more.
Oh, it's very different, but
yeah,
it's got that whole symbolism of being similar to the A New Hope poster and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh yes, I'm just noticing they gave him his pupils.
Oh yeah, from Rebels. Yeah.
Which is just not EU based, which is annoying.
You can just scrub that out with a marker.
Just color it in with Texas.
Yeah, why not?
And we have new art for Path of Distraction and Shatterpoint at the moment too.
Yeah, Shatterpoint. I don't know. Yeah, that's one that was done by Matthew Stover. I hope they do the all the other ones that he wrote, because he's one of my favorite writers. And yeah, I reckon that my favorite is probably Heir to the Empire. It just looks really neat.
Yeah, I think that looks like the best piece of art from there.
Yeah,
I don't think, if we're comparing the covers, I think the Path of Distraction, the original, looks better, because it almost looks like they started colouring it in and then they stopped.
Yeah, but I think that's got to do with I understand, but yeah, it's got to do with think of the dark side. But I think it's cool how they made it go. They went for an ancient sort of, unfinished sort of thing, because the new one is more polished and that's set back then.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And I'm hoping they're bringing the Old Republic novels a bit as well with the Essential Legends collection, because they should also do Knight Errant, especially seeing as that's the only novel in that time period.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Knight Errant could use a lot more stuff around it.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the comics, which help expand a bit, but then it's only the single novel, which is difficult. Hi, Teresa. And hello, Auto. Welcome. We're just talking about this to start with as well, which is good. Yes. So this is good as far as reprints go. I think they
it
mentioned
looks
in
good.
some reply about not creating new Legends books. The Glow of a Lightsaber, yeah, that's a good point.
They haven't, but I think that the art looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just for what the new stuff, whatever.
I think I just like the original art better, or the Brazilian or Japanese colors are really good.
Oh yeah, the Japanese ones were some of the best.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's fair opinion. I think that if they did expand on the novels, they could have made her more interesting for sure. Yeah, cool. So that's basically the new news that came out because I thought I would talk about it a little bit on here.
Yeah.
And for people that want to join, the link is in a group chat that I made on Twitter. So there's that.
So yeah, and also we had the vintage stuff that came on Disney Plus.
Oh yeah, the vintage stuff. Hang on, I'll pull up the article I found. She says about it because we might as well talk about that while we're going. I have to actually have an account for that. I don't have a Disney Plus account.
Yeah, that's all right. But yeah, they had a lot of new vintage stuff from the old days come back.
Yeah. So what we have here is what they're saying. So the vintage collection available now on Disney Plus. I'm not going to go through the whole article, but they put the two Ewok movies. Which they don't keep making the DVDs of. The Clone Wars 2003 series, the 2D micro series, Ewoks Season 1 and 2, and Story of the Faithful Wookiee, which is the cartoon section from the holiday special. Funny how they don't put out the actual holiday special. It's not that bad.
Yeah, because people probably wouldn't have liked it if they did that.
And I get separating the content, but also if they do the Story of a Faithful Wookiee separate to the holiday special, people can choose to watch them separately if they want.
Yeah, true.
As is my holiday special playlist on my YouTube channel. But yeah, so they put that, and then I've heard apparently they're putting droids up later, from what I've heard.
Yeah,
someone may have just been spitballing a bit, but they should since they put everything else on. But the way this vintage thing works, I don't believe that they are going to have any new series that they add to it because vintage more gives the impression of it being older and some more of the content that came out back in the day.
No, they won't add it. They won't add anything to it. I think what it is now, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good way to have the content available to everyone, especially if they've remastered it and upscaled it a bit and stuff.
If they had like a 4K for some of those things, then could attract more attention. But you know, HD is the only available format.
Yeah, and they would probably still have the masters of them, so it might just depend on the limitations when they actually created it. But like to upscale the Ewoks and the droid stuff to at least 1080p would be good.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, for 1,000 years we have basically nothing on the new Sith Wars for sure. Informal Geek, for sure. That sort of thing.
Hold on, I'll just come back 1 second. Yeah, I'll just be 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. I'll keep talking a little bit then.
Yeah.
I think the whole vintage thing is very much a thing to say, oh, get Disney Plus because the content's on there, which is unfortunate that we have them in no other way. I would hope that we get DVDs or another way to actually see the content through what's happening there. It doesn't really entice me to go and get Disney Plus extra because, like, oh yeah, one moment for you guys. You can still get the DVDs of the Clone Wars volumes, by the way. And that is here. I got them a while ago now. Just so you're aware, there is another way to watch the 2003 2D micro series while we're talking about it. So that's good. Yeah, we'll get to Dawn of the Jedi in a minute. I'll wait for Gungan to just get back. I thought just talk
Yeah,
about
man,
a
what's
couple
up?
of things. Hey, yeah. I was just saying as well, you can actually still get the DVDs for the 2003 micro series.
Yeah, you can.
If you want to.
I've seen some reviewers talk about it. But you know, seeing it on Disney it looks the same. Like, you know, it's just, and it ties in so well to the Republic. You know, the comics from back then. It's just really awesome.
Yeah, I love it. That's interesting to say it looks the same though, so they mustn't have upscaled it or done anything to try and remaster it.
No, there's no remastered, there's no upscaling, nothing like that. It's just pure HD, you know, OG stuff.
So that doesn't give me anything to go, I might get Disney Plus for a month, watch it because it's remastered, and then come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that I probably still won't get Disney Plus. I mean, finance reasons as well as just no, I wouldn't watch it enough to get it.
Well, you know, if there's Matt Wilkins has like, you know, he kind of is in it for the National Geographic, I think, from what he said. But you know, now with vintage, it's got to like open up more stuff.
Yeah, and if you do have Disney Plus, definitely give them watch throughs because the amount of times it's viewed will tell people what content that they want.
Yeah.
So that's good. But yes, Dawn of the Jedi, Force Dawn. We should get around to that, which will be great. Because I love the Dawn of the Jedi comics. I have my review separately up on my channel, but I'm changing my reviews anyway for later, so this will be a place where we can go in depth a bit more as well if we want.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pull this up here. So let's just start with your first impressions. What do you think of it?
I thought that the series obviously is by Ostrander, who I've said it a lot of times before. You know, he's not the best. He's not my favorite for this type of stuff. I think he's, especially in Legacy, you know, his writing is a bit repetitive in his stuff. But this wasn't that bad. I think, you know, with Taika Waititi set to direct a new film down the line, there's talk of, you know, Thoy or whatever, and that looks cool. But you know, I think that movie will probably take stuff from this, and yeah, he's just got like this. Ostrander's put in. You can see a lot of lore, and he's put in the Dubendu and the Thoyor, and talking about the law and how, you know, just the discussions between different civilians, different people. I think it's interesting to see that dynamic and how they were more unorthodox back in those days. So
Yeah, and we actually get the very first thing, the origin of the Jedi.
yeah, and the Ricotta War, it's pretty in depth, and you can see that they tried to copy some of the old Republic, and they went even further back and said, all right, let's utilize this stuff that we've created, and let's make, like, you know, let's really go back. And that's mentioned, you know, it's good at that.
And for copying stuff, I think that because of the way Star Wars is, you'll get recurring themes in the way some things play out and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, because that's how stories are. It's like all stories always tend to repeat similar sorts of things as far as especially like the hero's journey and the way that
Mm,
stories go. Like, oh, you're having a bad guy versus a good guys. That'll be a thing that recurs for ages,
yeah.
and so you get that a bit as well. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
my general impressions, I love it, basically. Of course,
I don't.
especially going back and reading it for the first time for my
Mm,
review, I it opened up the sort of whole what actually happened as the origin of the Jedi. Because if I read it on Wikipedia, it was years ago, and I do not remember.
Into the
So
Void. Yeah, sorry.
yeah,
Um,
so yeah,
yeah, I just wanted to say, like, Into the Void was that was very controversial. But I think this series is more well loved. I think a lot of people liked it a lot more.
yeah.
The older, the book and whatever was just, eh.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, if I remember correctly, for me, is that I hadn't read the comics and I read Into the Void, and it doesn't really set up the universe very well.
No.
And so yeah,
Yeah, I think it doesn't set up well, and I think Into the Void focused on a few characters in that time period, whereas like the the comics, they went into, okay, like, how did this whole era form, and what's the purpose of the whole thing?
yeah, and telling the origin of the Jedi as a story to the children is a good way of doing it, I think,
Mm.
and all of that.
The Ashlar and the Bogan was also interesting, and how, in I don't want to get into like canon whatever, but in Rebels they had the Bendu, right? The whole creature, the Bendu, that could have been from the monks, like Dai Bendu.
I mean, well, the monks, I think they come from George Lucas's notes more
Yeah,
because they end up taking the name of Bendu from George Lucas's notes and then creating the Dai Bendu monks,
yeah,
which is what George would have approved as well, given the approval thing at the time.
mm.
And then all of that. You're saying you always assume they went back 25,000 BBY or thereabouts because their previous references to the Jedi? Yeah.
Yeah,
And I was just
yeah.
checking, this is 25,805 BBY that Dawn of the Jedi Force saw on this set.
And I think like when Disney bought them out, right? The Iger said something about there was history dating back 25,000 years, and it's like, oh, that's cool. So they do acknowledge like the EU and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So
And I
that's
don't know
good.
if they sort of, yeah, to me it seems like they ran out of ideas and they can't think of different things to put in.
If
Yeah.
they had continued it, we would have seen more.
Yeah, for sure. From a geek saying, can't wait for supernatural encounters to expand on this period massively. And you think Intervoid is great? Yeah. It's been so long I don't remember the details of it. So I'd have to reread it to say 100% whether I liked it or not, or if there's just in the middle. Because it doesn't have to be an extreme either way.
I've heard a lot of talk about supernatural encounters. What are they actually? So it's like an old book that they're releasing. What's the?
So Joe Bongiorno was writing Supernatural Encounters before the EU decanonization, and it got approved in its original form to be published, but then with the decanonization it got cancelled. And so he's
So
gone and been working on it in his own time and updating it on his website and going to release actual physical copies to people that have donated to him. And so the original had approval from Lucasfilm, so you could say it's sort of a pseudo EU, I would call it, because it's had approval and everything, but it's still not officially released by Lucasfilm as such.
so
And
how
so
is
that's where
he?
it comes in.
Okay, so it's like sort of under fan fiction, but not really.
Yeah, it's a bit more than fan fiction. It's like very
Yeah, but
similar to I was talking about Fragile Threads, Expanded Universe author that has been approved to do stuff, even though it's more than Fragile Threads, continuing it in their own way.
yeah.
Supernatural characters got approval. Fragile Threads was just the author going, "I'll do it on Wattpad."
Christy Golden should do that too.
Yeah, it depends, I guess, if they feel like it's worth. Oh yeah, even then Skywalkers. Yeah, there's an E in there after the Y. Abel G. Pena released Skywalkers as well. Yeah, yeah, I'd be able to totally expand the text in full because they didn't give him the time to be able to put in all the connections there to Old Republic. I just look at it going, he didn't have the oversight it would have had if he continued to be able to expand it under Lucasfilm. But yeah. How the Jedi, yeah. I mean, there's a few projects like that, and I would love Escape from Dagu to be released as well somehow.
Yeah, that one I think doesn't Matt Wilkins have a copy of that? I heard or something like that on a live
I mean,
stream.
I have a digital file of it. It would just need self-publishing to be able to get a physical copy,
Yeah,
and I haven't worked that out yet.
looked like a pretty OT book.
Yeah, looks really cool. And yeah, that's Supernatural Encounters basically is this sort of expansion on it. But I would also, I'm getting a physical copy, but at the same time, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt because I know that it hasn't been officially released through Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
But it's the best new EU that we would get at the moment. So yeah.
Well, yeah, pretty close to it if it was approved by the people. Yeah, the story group.
Yeah. And it was approved beforehand, and then it was just thrown away. And it's changed it since it was approved. That's the thing for me. It's like, I know, especially the extra connection stuff would probably be beneficial, but it's just that approval thing of being an official EU thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got the origins of the Jedi, and it shows that there are actually a lot of different species. And this is probably what I would want to bring up as in diversity in Star Wars. To me, is all of the different aliens and everything going on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that you mentioned a few times. Like when you think of diversity in something like this, you think of different species, aliens, creatures, not necessarily genders or race.
Yeah, and so I love it because of that as well. Especially as we go into people like Sekna. Oh yeah, Seknas and Skalnas were the Rakatans, but how you have the pure blood Sith in this that are actually Jedi and that sort of stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
Because it sort of breaks that, if there was ever a reputation for them at the time, it breaks that misconception that the whole species is evil as well.
I think, I don't exactly know the placement, but I think that there's, because they got bored of the whole light versus dark thing, so I think they went and, like with the Vong, they took a aspect of, well, let's have them fight aliens, and that's kind of what they did as well with the Rakatans.
Yeah, I mean, the Sith don't exist at this point in time with Dawn of the Jedi, and so the Rakatans are the embodiment of the dark side at the moment and who they're fighting against.
And, going back to canon as well, sorry to go too much there, but like, they also did something where there's plant creatures or something like sentient, force sensitive, like dark side creatures. So they have that, but they have to have some sort of strange sentient like species to have to battle.
I think it makes it more interesting than just, oh yeah, here's bad humans.
Yeah. and you know, like
which is great for
after,
the start of Star Wars because it was in the movies and humans are a lot easier to source and do in live action. And
yeah,
then it's very much a thing of like, oh, okay. Now we can have the possibility of having all the different aliens and stuff in there. That's cool.
and
Oh yeah, Dawn of the Jedi is definitely setting up like Force Storm and Prisoner of Bogan are setting up for Force War, which I feel like their original plan was to do more in between, but then with the EU being decanonized and things getting cancelled, they managed to bring out Force War, which tied it up fairly well while you could infer what happened in between.
after Old Republic, I think people just got bored of that aspect of the, you know, bad versus good, and but you know, they tried to change it up so it's respectable.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been that part of Star Wars EU that expanded upon it and went, oh, there's grey areas and you have intrigue and stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you get a limited amount of stories you can actually tell with that. You can just change the settings.
And they did some great stuff, not just with the Ricardans, but with different, you know, enemies, allies, whatever it was, and it really represented the good versus bad very well in all of the series.
Yeah. And they had a nuance to it. They changed it up. It wasn't just Rebellion versus Empire all the time and all of that,
Yeah.
which is good.
I think this is just like, you know, if you want to go back, if you want to read, you know, what came very first, like the start of the entire thing, this is the series. Like, this is it.
Yeah, this is the first series chronologically in the Expanded Universe. I didn't say that before, but and you sort of know if you've read it. And I think the other thing I love about it is it has very much a sort of fantasy feel to it when you're reading the comics. Especially with the Rancor dragon.
Yeah.
Which
it's just, it goes back, and don't you think that with
Rancor dragon.
Yeah. Don't you think that with like the Thoyor, it reminds you of Mortis, kind of, right? Is that like a resemblance that was intended?
Most likely. I wouldn't actually be surprised, thinking back to trying to remember Mortis a bit, if that was a remnant of a Thoyor ship that something happened to.
Yeah, I want to know what that whole thing was in that arc and Clone Wars, and you know what the whole deal was, because that's just, you know, there are just things that need to be cleared up.
Connections that could be made and that sort of thing. It's cool to speculate. Like Abeloth was. The year was definitely influenced by the Mortis arc because Abeloth was based on what happened in the Mortis arc in Fate of the Jedi. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they went back and went, okay, what background can we give to it to slowly, as the plan would have been to more slowly build up to this has actually happened throughout to connect it all together, which would have been cool.
And I think like the best parts of this whole sort of, you know, franchise, and Filoni has said it, and you know, I know a lot of people don't like him, but the best part is really when it doesn't feel like itself and it goes into this other realm, and that's just the most exciting part, because you don't know what's going to happen, and you didn't know what was going to happen in this. You couldn't speculate, really. It was just stories self-contained.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for both. I really love this, so I think that you do want to have sort of, well, the part I love about Star Wars is when you have the sort of sci-fi fantasy mixture.
Yeah.
And you have all the stuff with the Force and that. Like, in the end, have you read the other Dawn of the Jedi comics?
No.
I won't spoil it for sure then. And it leads up to something that's like there's all this fantasy with the changing of the Rancor dragons and some Jedi alchemy that is explored in Into the Void and that sort of stuff. But there's also the science fiction stuff where they actually base it on some established rules of, okay, this is technology that has been set up for this, what happens later, and the you get a lot of technological stuff mixed in with the fantasy, and the Force is more the mysterious part to play. And it definitely ramps up later on. Well, I thought I'd start with Force Storm and see how much we talk about it and get into it, because, yeah. What do you think about the three main characters? Shay Coda, what's his face? That's the Sith guy. Anyway,
Oh, mate.
Tasha Rio and the other guy, for whatever reason, I'm blanking on his name.
I can't remember the Ostrander's names. I don't remember. It's not stored.
Well, the Force Hounds are named after Aurebesh characters, and they have those characters tattooed on them. So Trill is especially on her nose, you see that's the symbol for Trill.
Yeah.
And Zesh is, honestly, most of the time, that's a symbol for Osk, because it has a flat top instead of a pointed top on a lot of the art that we see, which I thought was funny.
I think the designs are just the most unique that we've gotten in this. And there was like, was it Jan December that illustrated or paint,
You go back up to the top. Yes, Jan Decima was the pencils. Dan Parsons were the inks, and Wes Dzioba was the colours.
Yeah, so probably it's Jan Decima.
Seknos. I was thinking correctly. I think I was mixing up between Seknos and Skalnas because they're so similar.
I think, yeah. Just like Decema's penciling and whatever, I think she does, she did Legacy probably, right? And Clone Wars, and they do a great mix. I think these two in particular.
Yeah. I love the art of it is very good, and I think it does have a different feel, because I'm reading Tales of the Jedi as well at the moment, and it gives a different feel for each of the eras between the different art, and they really serve the time period that they're in and the type of story that they're setting up.
Yeah,
which is great.
When you have a good person who knows how to write, you have a good person who knows how to draw it, you're good. The new stuff isn't like, it's not like that, you've got people who are kind of copying previous scenes in movies and whatever, and then they've also got people who just can't really, they write okay, but they're not like, they're just not great. they're not very good. They're definitely not up to par with this.
Yeah, for sure. I think someone was messaging me some running commentary as they were reading it, so I'll go through some of what he said as well, just out of interest. He read Dawn of the Jedi number 0 because that has a lot of background information and lore stuff in it.
Yeah.
That is not part of the actual story. There's some stuff that's explained later. I'll just go through and see, because there's the whole thing between Zesh and Shay Coda with how Zesh ends up turning around and saving them. What did you think of that part?
Zesh? Yeah, okay. So I think there's a lot of parts in these stories where it's like they talk. The parts that have the the action, the fantasy, the lore, the setting up. That was what I focused on most, and especially that scene. Can't remember their names, but the master and the two kids that are just sitting on those steps near.
Oh yeah, that's the opening after he gives them the history lesson. Yeah, I forget their names too.
That's that scene. So I think it's just stuff like that interested me most in the whole series. I didn't really care for much of the action. I just wanted to learn like what happened back then.
Yeah, a lot of the more interesting parts of this are the lore that it's building, especially since it is in a time period where it wasn't explored ever before.
Yeah,
And
and
so that's what I love too.
when
But
it
the action
comes,
is also really cool.
mm,
And how the Jedi don't actually have lightsabers and the Force Hounds have the Force sabers was really cool.
when it comes to like comics and stuff, you just kind of skim over the action parts, no?
It depends for me. Like sometimes if I realize I'm skimming, I'll pay a bit more attention to the art of it.
Yeah,
Especially when it's detailed art like this is really cool.
but when you know, you kind of skim over, because you want to sort of hear what they're saying more, because that's why you kind of get it nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is more interesting. At the same time, comics are a better form for writing action stuff than
Mm,
and people to visualize it and actually show what's happening than a novel. And with the way that the art form has grown, there's more possibility of doing that than in earlier times when people weren't as good at comics and drawing.
yeah, but when it comes to the books as well, they describe what's going on, and you get a good
Yeah,
picture in your head of like, I
but
can't remember, but there was this one scene in the Castellar trilogy, I think, and like Luke does this spin or something, and he cuts this enemy in two, and it's like you can really see it.
yeah, that's what I love about novels is that you can let your imagination run,
Yeah,
which is great too.
not
Because as
bad.
well as like, just an example of that is how the Sea Rook are described in Teresa Bakura. From the what I've seen of panels of the comic, I imagine them a bit differently to how they were drawn, just basically as dinosaurs,
Yeah, I wasn't a
which
big
is cool.
fan of Trisa Bakura. Yeah, it's an important book, but it was yeah, not a big fan.
Yeah, establishes some cool things like age of humans and stuff, and the
Oh yeah,
general idea of they actually have a longer life expectancy in Star Wars and stuff.
yeah, and there was this particular interaction between two of the characters. Um, I'm not going to spoil, but yeah, there was this two people, and there's this. I didn't like the whole like I enjoy. I'm not when it comes to politics and stories and stuff, I'm fine with it. This just I don't know. It was just as long as adds up to something, it's good. But this just kind of it didn't go much anywhere. A bit bland.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that they probably needed more time.
And having read
Uh,
like
mm,
yeah, having read Heir to the Empire and all that other stuff, you know that it's gonna get to that stage, and that's not a critique against prequel stuff, but you know that it's not gonna get anywhere far.
yeah, I mean, especially when it's just one novel,
Yeah.
it's tricky to do the politics in a larger scale. Well, Dawn of the Dead, my novel and comics didn't mesh well together. I would, as I said, I have to reread the novel, but that's fair. I think the only thread of connection was that Hawk Rio was connected in with the novel, and then there wasn't much else connecting them
Mm.
from memory. But then I could be forgetting a lot too, and I hadn't read the comics at the time.
It felt good, the whole thing. It gave you a good it was almost like Aquaman because
That's
it
one way
goes
to look
into
at
that
it.
realm.
Yeah, in that I think the instances of going into like that whole different space of like Mortis and the alternate dimensions, like with what's her name, Sunchild in the old Marvel comics and stuff, should be rare events rather than be what Souls is mainly about, because that makes them
Mm.
all the more special and important.
Yeah, it had some good
Thinking of
stuff.
that sort of thing,
Yeah.
I'll share this because this is one of the pieces of art that's really good. Is this one? It's really cool.
Yeah. I think I
um,
saw that. Yeah, I've seen that.
yeah. Well, if you read the comic, I hope you've seen that.
No, like I yeah, I skimmed across a lot of that second issue, but that was yeah, definitely a memorable scene.
Oh, yeah, because there's a lot of them first encountering Zesh in that as well and stuff.
Yeah, and just there are just some scenes that from these, like with Cade in Legacy, there's one scene that I remember really well amongst a lot of that battle and blurry area. There's just this one scene where he turns around, I think, to face the viewer, and it's just, it's great. I can't remember exactly which scene, but he's Jan Decema really does a good job on that sort of stuff.
I'm just having a look. It's probably a bit like this sort of thing in the bottom right as well. Like that
Yeah,
looks like
yeah.
it's looking more towards the
It
reader.
was, yeah, it was definitely one of those scenes where Cade sort of just turns around and he has this. It wasn't that exact scene, but it was.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. So how it's interesting how all three of the main characters get a vision of Zesh crashing as well and feel called towards him. As well as the whole idea of them coming to Tython and them being influenced to be in balance to be able to stop the weather from going out of control on Tython.
I think it was a good idea that they did move here, and even though I think like Old Republic came before, didn't it?
Oh, Republic's afterwards. This
No,
is the
no,
first chronologically.
no. Yeah, but like release.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Release date wise, yes. This came out 2012, 2013. So
Yeah,
right near
so
the end.
the connectivity between this and Old Republic, like you see that it goes out of whack, right? Tython, the whole thing goes pretty out of whack, and then
That's why it's called a Force Storm.
yeah, but then in Old Republic, right, they have to move back because their temple was destroyed by Malgus.
Yeah.
So, but you see that it's still not completely normal because there are flesh raiders.
Yeah.
There are still lava areas. People are being captured in the game.
Flesh Raiders are stuff to mention actually from Dawn of the Jedi Force War because they're actually in that comic, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I won't spoil much, but yeah.
The online game just showed you so much.
Although it did show that the weather had settled more.
Yeah, well, it definitely wasn't as extreme as the Force Storm. But
so after Dagon, after the events that happened between Force War and then going into the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic and that, a lot happened, and even between Tales of the Jedi and the end of Dawn of the Jedi, and that I think the events of that changed the weather and made it sort of work. But the whole thing of balance is interesting to see for me because they basically just don't do dark side stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had I feel like this whole thing is just, as I was reading it, like, I feel like it's so much like Mortis, because you have Ashley, you have Bogan, and then you just kind of have this thing where they're trying to keep it under control. And so much of the lore in this, whole Mortis thing is pretty much resonating off Force Storm. It's just so similar.
Yeah, I mean, and these are all probably based on the ideas that George presented as well. And so there's similarities. The main point that I was trying to get to a bit, though, is that the balance is actually having the light side in power and not, you have a bit of dark side and a bit of light side.
Well, that's what balance means, though, isn't it? Isn't balance just
Yeah,
when...
straight from George Lucas's mouth, he said that. And so I thought it was good to point out an actual physical thing that you can actually read that clearly shows it.
Yeah, I think it was cool.
As well. And then so we get a bit of a power structure with the Rakatans, how they end up sending out their Force hounds to track down Force sensitives, and they're eating Force sensitives. Fun times.
The Rakatans, yeah, I mean, Flesh Raiders, Rakatans, aren't they the same thing?
No, they're not actually. Flesh
I know, but
Raiders. It will explore at Force War, but quickly, Flesh Raiders are genetically changed, different from Rakatans, and they're basically a subcase of slaves.
yeah. And it goes to show you later on how the Flesh Raiders actually do keep slaves, right? Yeah, in the online game.
I think they're trying to. They don't gain a lot of intelligence until some of the stories that happen in SWTOR. Like you go into like one of the side stories is a Flesh Raider trying to communicate, and then you can decide whether they get an opportunity to try and be a Jedi or not.
Yeah, there's a whole underground caves, and it was pretty rad.
Yeah, it's really cool. And a lot of that would have been made during Force War because of all the stuff that's going on there, which we'll get to eventually. Yes.
It's so interesting how they just managed to connect those two, even though they're so far apart in just every way. They did a pretty good job of.
Yeah. Well, you see how much SWTOR actually connects into the Rakatans, and that's a huge amount. Because I'm especially my last SWTOR stream, I was playing 3 Bell Sabbaths, and that is all about the Rakatans actually imprisoning the Eshkar on there.
Yeah.
And a lot more going on there. Which the Eshkar were a previous species that tried to resist the Rakatan Empire as well.
Interesting.
This is really cool. It's so disappointing that you have to play the SWTOR to get the information. Rather than it being in like a source book or a bit of a summary thing.
Didn't they have like a narration of a Jedi Master who gave you?
Jedi Master Nostril gave narration for the history of the Jedi up to that point, so as a lead into the game, so that people that just play the game would understand. Oh, here we go. This is what's happened before, and so we understand the setting a bit more and stuff.
Those videos are just the most helpful thing. Seriously,
they're great.
And it's just a shame that they weren't finished.
I mean, I think they finished them as far as what they wanted to put out of them.
Yeah.
But they would have really benefited from them doing bits and pieces of that later on to actually encapsulate, okay, this is what happens with the Jedi Knight, this is what happens with the Jedi Consular, this is what happens with each of the ones. But of course, at the same time, when a game comes out, they don't say, oh, this was what actually happened in the story, because it is multiple choice. And so you get like the KOTOR thing where they might bring out a book afterwards, but they won't actually adapt the events in the game.
But I think like the main class, right? The main class that I think is intended kind of is the Knight class, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the Jedi Knight is generally what we got of Knights of the Old Republic 3.
Yeah, that is, and when you go into DLC, when you go into expansions, you can see that was pretty much the story that you really only had to play. Like if you just wanted the whole thing, that was really only the one.
I think you can play any of the Force sensitive classes with Knights of the Fallen Empire. Like the others, that make sense if you do it maybe as a group where everyone's working together. But it's like the planetary story arcs. I would say that you have a group of every single class for that side, and you play through, and that would be what canonically happened in the EU.
Yeah.
But the whole thing of that is that from Knights of the Fallen Empire, it does not make sense for a non-Force sensitive.
Well, it gets a bit wonky down the road, but
yeah. Anyway, we should go back to Dawn of the Jedi Force Song a bit. We can talk about all sorts, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what else is there to mention? I mentioned a couple of things. I think Seknos was the first person to actually use force lightning as well that we know of anyway.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was
So there we go.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that you may have skimmed over. It's in issue 2. When he's
Yeah.
experimenting with the force lightning and everything, that's him basically creating it because none of the others actually know about force lightning.
Interesting, because the Sith, ever since like Exar Kun's days and all the ancient, you see that a lot, but you don't. I think it's interesting how they create these types of force powers, and you get to see them, most of them used for the very first time.
Yeah.
It would have been cool if we actually got like, okay, if we actually got to sit down in a classroom or something, and you could see, okay, here's this, here's that, and different abilities would start to arise from different people.
Yeah. And then especially how he tries to use it in the fight with Zesh, and then Zesh uses it later on.
Yeah.
It's like he's learned how to do it because, of course, the Force Hound is quick learner. Actually, redirecting the lightning in that scene reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Avatar, yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
I think like a lot of this may have been inspired by Avatar, because you get that fantasy sense and just the atmospherical outline of how everything was drawn. They probably saw Avatar and said,
And there's probably just more similarities than actual being inspired by, because the art is a lot older. Like, it's not an anime inspired art, really, which it would be for Avatar. Yeah, there's definitely things there. The Force Sabers were the first appearance chronologically as well of technology that the Rakatans made that rely on using the dark side of the Force to power.
And what about what about the power packs? Remember the power packs?
Yeah, the power packs that are in Tales of the Jedi. They come a lot later, because basically during the war, after Force War and before Tales of the Jedi, in Tales of the Jedi they go, oh, the origin of the Sith was the Dark Jedi fought against the Jedi, and then the Dark Jedi found Korriban and then influenced the Sith species on there to be able to become the Sith that we know. And so in Tales of the Jedi they give that background that I'm inferring that they reverse engineered the Force Saber and worked out how to create lightsabers that don't rely on the dark side of the Force to use, because they needed to combat the dark Force Sabers.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, and goes back to show you like a time when they were more vulnerable and how different they became. And in the lead up to Old Republic and whatnot, in the lead up to Clone Wars and whatever, you can definitely see that it changes. They went from being in this environment of peace on Typhon, and then they go to like a more city populated area where
and it's like poetry. It rhymes. It's like with the prequels, they have their peaceful time and then they're forced into actually fighting against the Rakatans, which is cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of dynamic.
And I'll share this too. Obvious KOTOR connection.
The Star Forge.
Yes. So that's really awesome to see as well. That
was
connected it all in.
Interesting how long that's actually been around, because in KOTOR you do hear that it's been around for, I can't remember exactly the number, but for quite
thousands
a while.
of years,
Yeah, and Rev and Malik sort of stumble across it, or in one of their missions you see a flashback.
So that's about 2,200 years, approximately. Oh, sorry, 20,000. Yeah, something like that. 22,000 years, something like that.
That really
Since we see the
catches.
Starforge there. Looking at the timeline a bit.
That really catches the eye, and you know, again with Jan DeSema and her directing and the way that she's done it all, you can see that she's probably played or heavily witnessed gameplay from KOTOR, and
Yeah,
she
for
really
sure.
understands the angles of how to capture it all on that particular panel.
Yeah. An interesting thing is when you read like the Essential Guide to Warfare source book and stuff, a lot of the technology, like hyper drives and stuff, were reverse engineered from the Rakatan technology, but to make it work so that it wasn't using slaves and all that.
Yeah.
All the stuff that actually hurts people.
And it's like a whole technical thing behind that Starforge, because there are didn't Malik want to use it because they had weapons engineering, they wanted an army sort of thing.
Yeah, basically the Starforge will copy the designs of a ship and continually keep recreating it.
So so what I want to know is how did so was that all just there, like was that
Well, we
all just
don't have an answer, but the Rakatans built it.
yeah.
And then it is sort of there. The location was lost afterwards, obviously, and then Malik and Revan rediscovered it when they were
And
came
yeah,
back as Sith.
so later afterwards they defeat it in KOTOR, correct? Right at the end? Or
Yeah,
is that yeah.
they'd blow it up, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and then in Darth Bane, doesn't he sort of stumble across, like, I don't think it's exact. Doesn't he go through the rubble of the Starforge when he's?
Oh, I forget now. I'd have to read it, but yeah.
I'm so
To
bad with
correct
names. I'm so bad
yeah,
with names, but he. So I think what happens is he flies down through the rubble of the destroyed forge,
yeah. It's
Starforge.
probably it would be the same that's the end planet of KOTOR, wouldn't it?
Yes, yeah, and he
Yeah.
flies down and lands on that planet, right, where the the medal ceremony was. Was that Dantooine or
Yeah, I forget
different
now.
planet? Yeah, different planet, I think.
Yeah, I'm
Different
just
area, and
looking.
that's where he stumbles across the Revan's holocron, whatever. So
Oh yeah, Lehon.
was that the planet?
I looked it up. Lehon is the planet. It says Darth. Oh,
And
also referred to as Rakata or Rakata Prime.
yeah, and that was
Yeah,
like a sort of a beachy, nice environment.
yeah. The place where you can get Eldar to kill mission. Yes.
Yeah, it was
Mission.
a. Mm,
Fun times.
interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you see the effects of all of the events before they happen. It's like it's interesting. It's a common theme, it seems like, because we see Marco Ragnos only as a Sith ghost, Frieden
Mm.
Nat only as a Sith ghost. But then they must have been intending at one point to go back and actually tell the stories of those characters, but they didn't for whatever reason. And so we see a similar thing here, but it actually played out where we see the Starforge a lot earlier on, which is really cool.
He can see things before they happen. It's a Jedi trait.
It's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons, similarities, and I think that's the reason that they decided to uh, compile this series, do this, tell this particular story,
Mm.
and
Oh yes,
it
and we
worked out
get
well.
a rare instance of implying that there were more Wookiee Jedi we haven't seen yet. Because each of the species in the solar system,
Hmm.
that's the thing to say actually, is they only had sublight ships, so they didn't have hyperspace
And
in these comics.
that particular Wookiee that was right there, it seems to be like a much older one. Like he
Yeah,
has got some grey hairs.
a couple of grey hairs and that. Yeah, for sure. Like each of the species that came there were picked up by the Thoyor from other parts of the galaxy and came together.
Yeah.
And they're all force sensitive. So there were more Wookiee Jedi, even though George said, "Oh, no more Wookiee Jedi. Just don't put them in the comics." But you implied that they were there. Yeah.
And we see that all the time. Like it's just, wasn't there like a different Wookiee Jedi in the young Jedi Knights, or?
Yeah, Lo Barker was
Yeah,
Chewie's cousin,
absolutely. Yeah.
or Lumpy's cousin, one of them.
Mm.
And then we have Tyvoka in the prequel era.
Is
During
that
the
from
Clone Wars, I think he was.
yeah, in the youngling arc?
No, that's not Tyvoka. Here, I'll bring up a picture.
Ah, yeah. I thought you were talking about the one in the Filoni series.
Oh no, I forgot about that one. TCW isn't that high on my list, and I only watched it once, so I didn't forget about stuff from it as much.
Fair enough.
This is Tyvoka. She's really cool.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Cool. Now I'm just going to flick through again and see if there's anything else of note. Oh, yes, the ending decision to send Zesh to Bogan. What do you think of that decision?
I think the Bogan, it's interesting how they have, I don't know, I guess it was fine. I don't know. I guess it was an okay decision, but I think the idea, I mean, do we know what happens, like, in the aftermath of how the Zesh in the history books, how they're portrayed, how they're seen? Do we see anything like that later down the line? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen in Prisoner of Bogan and Force War. So you can read those for more information.
Okay.
Especially when it jumps to Force War, it gives a lot of what I think they were going to slowly build up to, but then they didn't have the time to, so they did it in a way that you can infer sort of what happened.
Yeah.
Especially Prisoner of Bogan jumps around a lot of the planets in that solar system, which is cool.
Yeah, I think but they just need to, if they had done more, I would be happy. Like if they had done more,
Yeah.
I need to see more of this era, and it's pretty easy like to just collect the whole thing because it's not much involved.
Yeah. Oh, that's because, the last comics were in 2013, and then you know what happened in 2014. And so that's part of the reason why we want the year to be continued, is that we have all these great stories that we just want to see what happened.
Yeah, and it's not like we haven't seen Disney continue it under the banner because.
Well, they've been reprinted under the banner, and then Marvel 108 is a good example of how they can go about labeling it and bringing out new stuff with it.
Yeah, but for a whole year, 2013, they were still going with it, and it was under
even
Disney.
early 2014, and some of the bits after April 25th, 2014 was there, just bringing out some last bits and pieces like Son of Dathomir, even though some people can headcanon it into just a new canon or whatever. That's technically part of the EU as well because it was all written beforehand.
Son of Dathomir, another great series. Part of both, and it's even been taken by Marvel, and it's been put in the banner, put under the banner of the Marvel.
Yeah, it's in both though, isn't it? In both continuities.
Yeah, it is. Son of Dathomir. Yeah, it is.
So I don't think they printed it with the banner, did they? They just put the Marvel logo on it instead of the Dark Horse logo.
Yeah, Marvel kind of took that. What I want to see, right, from Epic Collections, and I know they did an Epic Collection of Force Storm, I know that. And they had, they've done various other.
Yeah, there's trade paperbacks of Force Storm, Prisoner of Bogan, and Force War that I have.
What I want to see is an epic collection of the Final Republic series because they haven't done that, and they also haven't reprinted the Episode 3 stuff.
Yeah, the reprinting's weird.
A lot of people hate
No,
it.
it's weird on what they're actually deciding to do. Like the Dawn of the Jedi comics are printed in an epic collection that's called Tales of the
Yeah.
Jedi. When there's already a Tales of the Jedi series that they could put in a Tales of the Jedi for you.
Tales, yeah, I think the tales are like spread across different things. They try to keep
And
it.
yeah, the idea between Tales of the Jedi, as I'm reading them, is that there were stories that are told through someone looking at a holocron later on, and that's the way they were going. Oh, we're looking back through the eyes of a holocron type of thing for going this far back, which is a really
Mm,
cool idea. And I think that's why they called it Tales of the Jedi, is because they were going through that lens of the, oh, we're looking at this through a holocron
mm,
and going through and finding out what happened.
yeah. And it's just like the whole of Force Storm is kind of reminds you of like it's taking you back to a history lesson
Mm.
of something
Especially
in the
the start.
past.
That is a history lesson.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's completely.
But yeah, it takes you back to the time where they might embellish things as well because of the fantasy elements and stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting. It was an interesting series. What would you rate this like from best legends to worst?
I say it's one of the best, especially since it's an introduction to the era, which I always love introductions to different eras.
Yeah.
Now, what would you rate it?
Out of 5,
Or so,
like a
however you like to rate things. Like I would say, best to like one of the better things, and it's worth reading, to one of the worst things, and it's not really worth reading, sort of thing.
well, I think it's essential to some people because if you want to know like how the whole thing came about, everything, it's actually very essential. But if you know, if
Yeah.
you're just in it, if you're just in it to read like, if you're just in it to read, stuff that involves, more of the Skywalkers or whatever, it's not necessary. You don't have to if you don't want to. But I think it's pretty important, in terms of learning about the history of the whole galaxy, and yeah, it delves into some cool ideas.
Yeah, fans of the Jedi will definitely like it
Yeah,
because they get the
absolutely.
information on the origin of the Jedi.
Yeah,
I think people that have been wondering about the Rakatan Empire, you actually get to see the Rakatan Empire at near the end of its reign,
mm,
where we've only got hints of the Rakatan Empire before this came out, and things sort of left over,
yeah.
which is really cool.
I think
And
yeah,
it's a different feel from, of course, the original trilogy or New Republic or whatever era that's later on, but I think that's needed for going into a different era because, of course, it would have a different feel to it, which is cool.
mm,
Then, of course,
yeah,
you get similarities again. It's like they mentioned, like in the Essential Guide to Warfare, which is a great source book, by the way. They
yeah.
talk
I've
about the
heard a lot
Despot
about
Wars,
that.
the Despot Wars, and it mentions this as well with Queen Shikakwa
Yeah,
of and the whole Despot Wars there. So they're even building lore as they're introducing all of the new things, which is a great way of doing it. And then they
and
build on that in Prisoner of Bogan and everything, which is cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Is there
Do you
anything
think
more you'd say?
I just want to? I think that's pretty much it. We've summed it up. But I just want
Yeah.
to. I would like if they had continued this to make Tim Leben was the guy who did Into the Void, right?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like it if they got in new writers to put in more of their ideas because there have just been. I'm sure there are so many fan writers out there who'd love to
Mm.
get stuck into it. And if they had continued it, we could have learned about the Rakatans. One thing I want to know is how the Celestials sort of came into this whole thing and how they went from their planet and how they migrated from their planet to the Thorior ship sort of thing. I want to know how that came about. That's one of the most interesting things.
Yeah,
And
building
just
on a lot more of the background, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the thing about the authors is too, like you're saying that John Ostrander was very similar between his series.
Yes, yeah.
That would probably be part of like you want to bring in different authors and things for different ideas.
Mm.
And I think this is less similar than you would say the Clone Wars and Legacy is, as far as Quinlan Voss and Kate Skywalker, probably.
Yeah.
So
I think it was
there's
it wasn't like Legacy or the older Clone Wars or whatever, and that's good. But I would like to see someone else other than Ostrander write all of this stuff because it feels like he's just doing all the work for Dark Horse, at least back then.
yeah, especially near the end. I think because once Disney purchased Lucasfilm, there was a bit of that interim period in 2012, 2013 that they weren't exactly sure what was going to happen, but they were sort of continuing on as they were.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, CJH. And that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole bit of probably behind the scenes stuff that I'm not aware of there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean greetings, Callum? Oh, no. Hail me, I am your master. Yeah. Cool. So
you only get one of these out of one sheet.
That pretty much sums it up, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it, man.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you guys for joining and watching. This has been sort of a test of the first one of how this would go as well. I tried to bring more people on, but people weren't available, or they said last night or whatever they couldn't come and stuff for that. So yeah, I've been trying to bring people on. If you're interested, let me know. I can send you the link to join as well in other months. And this should continue next month. At the moment around the same time, but you will hear, and I put the live stream as scheduled at least a week in advance. So that'll be good. And as far as the next comic to read, I will put polls up on Facebook and Twitter. I do it in the Facebook Expanded Universe Preservation Society group to be able to get the best feedback for what we want to read next. But it would make sense to read Prisoner of Bogan and then Force War next, and whether we want to do that together. Yeah, CJH, that's the name of the podcast. I should say as well, thank you to Stig Kenobi, even though he said he couldn't make it because of his other commitments, that he helped come up with the title of the show, I'll call it. Because I wanted to not just call it a book club either, because we talk about comics, but we can also talk about video games sometimes and that sort of thing. So it'd be good.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. And that is that. I really should have uploaded my outro, shouldn't I? 1 second. It's the first one. I didn't have StreamYards paid for a while because I wasn't using it much.
Yeah, that's all right.
But yeah, anyway, any last thoughts, Gungan? Do you want to say stuff that you're doing?
That's it, bro. That's it. I think, I'm not doing much. I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. That's it, bro.
Yeah. So what have you got any plans for more content on YouTube at the moment?
Nah, not now. Not using much now. Not utilizing it. But surely in the future, if I think of something, then it'll go up.
That's right. You've probably got other priorities, right? I've been behind a bit on the YouTube stuff.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
I've just been trying to work out the time to be able to record stuff and then edit, which it should help now that I'm condensing my reviews down. I'm just going to answer a few key questions about the book or the comic, I think. And then if people want to expand on it, that's the place for this or for other areas, like on the Discord, which you can join. There's a link in the description where I'm going to be sharing more comic screenshots and stuff as I read them. Like I've shared some of the Tales of the Jedi, the Sith War ones recently because I've been going through that. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Gungan. It's been great having you on.
Thanks,
And
bro.
thank you to all you beautiful people in the comments and watching. Happy Easter, because it's Easter tomorrow. And hey, may the Lord be with you, yeah.
That's great.
I thought it was appropriate. So yeah, thank you. I'll catch you next time.